Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our system reset discussion. We're going to get started in about a few minutes, so hang tight, grab some water, and we'll get ready soon. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're going to get started in a few minutes, so just hang tight, and we'll get started soon. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our system reset discussion. We're going to get started in a few minutes, so hang tight, grab some water, and we'll get started soon. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our system reset event. We're going to get started in about 1 minute, so hang tight, and we'll be back soon. All right, and it is 5:03 and we're about to get started. So hello, everyone. Welcome to our event on System Reset, how tech can recruit, hire, and retain people returning from incarceration. My name is Marian Wellington, and I'm Tech Equity's Director of Content. I'm thrilled to be with you all today, so thank you so much for being here. And we are really honored to be joined by 3 amazing panelists today and our keynote speaker, Mayor London Breed of the City and County of San Francisco. It looks like Mayor Breed may be joining us right now. So yes, great timing. Thank you so much, Mayor Breed, for being here, and I'll let you take it away.
Thank you. I didn't realize I was the keynote speaker. How cool is that?
Absolutely.
Well, it's great to be here. I wish we were in person, like I know all of you wish we were, and we're getting there. We're getting there, and we're going to be there sooner rather than later. Thank you to Tech Equity for bringing us all together to discuss the importance of hiring so many people that have challenges with employment opportunities, period. I remember System Reset first started with the Human Rights Commission, and it's great to see the growth of this program. Your work to assist employers in hiring workers with a history in the criminal justice system is so important. We always talk about a second chance, but when the opportunity presents itself to give someone a second chance, sometimes we forget about that. And what having a second chance means is the difference between life and death, the difference between continuing to be involved in illegal activity and turning your life around. And it's right in line with what we're doing at the City and County of San Francisco. We're trying to help change and save lives. One of the things that I'm focused on as mayor is bringing my experience of growing up in poverty and into this office and how we make decisions at City Hall so that we're not repeating some of the same mistakes of the past that are not leading to changes. And what I've seen throughout my life is that there are people who make mistakes. You know, we all make mistakes. Raise your hand if you haven't made a mistake. But after we've gone through and we've gone through the criminal justice system in particular, and we paid our debt to society, sometimes people aren't given a second chance. So many people I grew up with around the city didn't really believe there was anything for them to do. The first thing they would say when I say, have you registered to vote? No, I can't, I'm a felon. Have you, applied for a job here? No, I can't, I'm a felon. Do you need housing? Can you apply for affordable housing? No, I'm a felon. I've been in jail. And that's unfortunate. So many of the kids I work with when I ran the African American Art and Culture Complex here in San Francisco really didn't see a future for themselves either in the city, especially downtown. I didn't know what downtown really was, other than the place, if we were lucky enough to have a little bit of money, we could go shopping and maybe get some shoes at Macy's. And that's really what I want to change. We are in the middle of economic recovery right after a pandemic, a global pandemic that impacted countless people who lost their jobs, lost their wages, lost access to services. And because of those impacts, it's really imperative that in our recovery, we prioritize those who have been ignored or left behind for far too long. That means creating opportunities, especially for communities that continue to be challenged, those who might be disabled, those who might be veterans, those who are African American, Latino, and those who are formally involved with our criminal justice system. Just this year, we invested $42 million in our workforce system to deliver programs that center around job readiness, that's getting people ready to even begin a training program in some cases. We provide vocational training and subsidized employment services to over 10,000 San Franciscans. And this investment also builds on our Tech SF program to support more apprenticeship programs, to get more local residents into tech careers with all the tech stuff we got all over San Francisco. This is so important. And we have invested in programs like 5 Keys and the Goodwill to support those impacted by the justice system, and they've been amazing partners. Just this summer, we launched the Women and Families First initiative to provide 300 women with job and career training and opportunities in the field of healthcare, hospitality, tech, and construction, while also providing early childcare tuition for up to 800 children. We are making sure women can secure well-paying, stable jobs that have paths for promotions and further career development, all while knowing that their children are safe and well taken care of. Don't we wish every company was like Salesforce? They got a childcare right downstairs with, all this new innovative technology. Well, you see a theme here. We are giving people the opportunity to change their lives, but it takes more than the city to make real change. We need great partners like Tech Equity, helping to deliver programs like System Reset. And tech companies, we need you to all get on board. This is the one thing tech companies are always saying, what can you do? What can you do? What can I do? What can I do as a company in San Francisco? Well, partner with Tech SF to bring new talent into your workplace. Don't be afraid of working with someone that may not be a younger person finishing college that is focused on tech. There are so many different kinds of people that have different perspectives and creative minds that could have be very beneficial to your company. Work with Tech Equity System Reset to bring equitable hiring practices overall, because we know it's not just tech workers. We know you have HR people and you have receptionists and you have executives and administrators and all those other things too. Participate in our Opportunities for All program, which supports our local students with paid internships so they can see what it's like firsthand to work at one of these incredible companies. Airbnb did a really great program collaboration with our Opportunities for All program, where these kids had a chance to not only work and do all the design stuff with setting up, staging, and all this really cool stuff that I didn't even know existed. They got a chance to eat free in the cafeteria and hang out and talk to and be mentored by a lot of the people that worked in the company, and they got paid. So they worked real hard and showed up on time. But most of all, think about how you as a company can bring in those who have been historically excluded from your companies and from the tech industry. That will make real change for our city and the Bay Area. Again, I want to really thank all of you for being here today, Tech Equity for bringing us together, the panelists for joining us this evening to have this very important conversation, and all the companies for listening and taking the first step. I look forward to continuing working with all of you as we shape a more diverse and equitable workforce that truly represents the diversity and the amazing excitement that our city will continue to have as we reopen the economy here in San Francisco. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much for joining us, Mayor Lyndon Breed. We really appreciate it. Thanks for sharing your words with us. Great. So before we hop into the main conversation, I wanted to make sure that anyone new joining us gets an opportunity to know who we are and what we're about at Tech Equity. So we engage tech workers to take action on building an economy where everyone benefits from the growth that tech has created. So we do this in three main ways. First, education with events like this, with educational content on our website and on our social. Follow us on Instagram, where we're doing a lot to try to educate folks on housing, workforce and labor, and other areas around systemic inequities. Second is public policy. We work in partnership with community groups to develop a set of public policy priorities to advance our mission. And third, corporate policy like this, where companies are willing, we work with them to improve their corporate practice to benefit their employees and all workers. And our two areas of focus are on housing and workforce and labor. We really want to thank you for all being here today. We love being able to provide these events to our community, and we miss seeing you in person. If you love them, if you get something out of them, or you generally just like that an organization like us exists, we please ask you to become a member. It helps us to keep existing, which we'd like to do. We're dropping a link in the chat. You can become a member by giving $10 a month or $100 a year. And then just a little bit of housekeeping before we launch into the conversation. We do have a code of conduct that'll be dropped in the chat as well. We really encourage to have a safe space for learning. So please feel free to use the chat, have conversations, react to what you're hearing, but also please be respectful of your fellow attendees and their opinions as we are working together to have generative conversation. And then if you have any questions for the panelists, we'll have some time at the end to ask them. If you do have questions, please drop them into the Q&A feature at the bottom. So it's a little button with the two chat bubbles. We will use that to be doing the Q&A section. If you put your questions in the chat function, we might not be able to see it. So we really encourage you to use that Q&A function. And then the recordings will be shared at the end of this event. So if you can't stay for the whole thing, or you have friends who couldn't make it and you want to share it, the recording will be made available online. So you can expect a follow-up email with the link. Great. And before we get started, I actually wanted to thank Blend for sponsoring this event. So Blend shared that one of their beliefs that centers their diversity, inclusion, and belonging work is becoming the equitable employer of the future. In order to achieve this, they know that they must actively remove barriers to participation, invest in development, and maintain a culture where everyone feels valued. Blend is honored to be sponsors of today's event, and they are excited to implement the system reset framework for recruiting, hiring, and retaining people returning from incarceration at Blend. We are personally so excited that Blend is going to be walking the walk by implementing the system reset framework, and we really applaud them for being a leader in the industry. So thank you so much. And with that, let's dive into the meat of this. So for those that don't know about System Reset, it started as a conversation convened by the city of San Francisco to bring together tech companies and community organizations who were eager to find ways for people returning from incarceration to benefit from that massive growth and opportunities created by the tech industry. Tech Equity was asked by the group to put together tools that could be used across the tech industry and activist community to support companies in successfully welcoming and retaining returning people within their companies. So we developed a system reset guide for tech companies that are interested in hiring returning people, as well as a microsite to tell the stories of people who are involved with these initiatives across tech. We are really excited to announce the release of our guide and the microsite today. We'll be dropping the link in the chat so you can explore the site, you can download the guide, and you can share it with your company and your peers. And after this, we're really building a campaign to get System Reset into every company, a tech company in California. So your first step is to take the System Reset pledge and get involved today. And with that, I'm very excited to welcome our three amazing panelists. So we have Ken Oliver, the Executive Director at Crop, Natrina Gadanda, the Senior Program Manager at Slack for Good, and Shelley Winner, a restorative justice activist and product specialist at Microsoft. So thank you all so much for being here, and I'm really excited to talk with you all today. I wanted to start with you, Ken, about the work that you do at CROP. So as we all know, there's a strong connection between ending mass incarceration and ensuring that there aren't unnecessary barriers to employment for people. And I know that's what you built a lot of your work at CROP around. Can you talk a little bit about your model for interrupting this cycle and just generally how you approach your work?
Around since 2008, and they did a lot of work inside the prison system, working with men and college students who were outside that used to come into the prison system to talk about things like workforce, personal leadership development, et cetera. And when this leadership team was released from prison, they really started to focus on how they could reimagine reentry. I used to be a policy director at Legal Services for Prisons with Children and did a lot of work around Ban the Box, or the Fair Chance Act, as it's affectionately known. And I would spend a lot of time talking to HR and talent people and C-suite people about Ban the Box and how we could usher people into the tech sector, formerly incarcerated people. And oftentimes, tech HR executives would talk to me about baseline skill sets, and they would be interested in developing programs to onboard people, but they were concerned about the skill level that existed with the prison population. That kind of gave us an idea about creating a boot camp, if you will, that really was meant to train people in the tech sector in various different tracks like UX design, project management, et cetera. And so we developed partnerships with Google and Oracle and some with Microsoft to really use some of their sector-based certifications to train people who are exiting incarceration. And getting those people trained and skilled up so that way they could offer the proper value proposition to some of these tech companies when they go apply. Another thing that we really knew that we had to focus on was really a robust DEI practice that had as its baseline fair chance hiring as an inclusion practice for corporations and specifically tech companies here in the Bay Area. We've been working with a lot of tech companies and going in and doing 8-week workshops with corporations to teach them how to do onboarding practices, teach them how to build relationships with stakeholders, et cetera. And we've had a great response with that. Another thing that we really decided to focus on is how do we create a holistic and human-centered model that including the housing component, which is kind of what you guys focus on too at Tech Equity Collaborative, and really take some of those initial economic stressors away from people who serve long periods of incarceration and get them out of that transitional job mill that typically affects them when they come out, when they're forced to focus on high labor jobs, low paying jobs, and it's very difficult for them to get out of that virtuous cycle. So we're excited about the work that we're doing. This year, we were able to convince the legislature and the governor of California to support us in our work, and they gave us a historic investment of $28.5 million to build out the first residential tech-centered workforce development program really in the country of its kind. So we're really excited about partnering with the California Workforce Development Board. We have several tech partnerships, and we're excited to do the work.
That's amazing. Yeah, when we heard about the news of your funding from the state, we were like, this is going to be huge. So big props to you and your organization for all the work you've done. Before we continue with the conversation, I forgot to give a shout out to Chris Garcia, our ASL interpreter. So thank you so much, Chris, for being here and helping to make our event more accessible. Speaking of Microsoft, Shelley, you actually have lived through this process. You've gone through the process to get hired onto tech, and you've detailed what your process was like in your wonderful TED Talk. If people haven't seen it, I highly encourage you to Google Shelley Winner. And you've become an activist in ensuring that everyone can receive these kinds of opportunities. So my very, very big question to you is, what have you learned? And specifically, what do you think tech companies and tech workers can do to ensure that more people are hired and welcomed into tech companies?
All right, so let's start with the first question. What have I learned? I learned that having a criminal record definitely is a huge barrier when trying to find employment. I knew it would be before I was released, but I think going through my experience with Microsoft of getting the job offer and the excitement that I had, telling all my friends, telling all my family, because here I was fresh out of prison and now working for one of the biggest tech companies in the world. And it was, I was beyond proud of myself for this. And, you know, and of course, like anybody who gets a job offer, you want to tell your friends, you want to tell your family, and you're proud of yourself. I was honest about my background check when I got the job offer. And I was honest about it on the background check. And I knew it was going to get flagged, but I just prayed that my job offer would not get rescinded. And when it did, it was that moment where I just felt, am I going to have to pay for my past for the rest of my life? Am I going to have to wear these invisible handcuffs? Am I ever going to be able to find a career? Am I going to ever be able to find a job with a living wage? And I didn't know what to do. I was going to school at the time, and I figured, I'll just keep going to school. I'll work towards my degree. Hopefully, by the time I graduate, there'll be a company that I can find that will hire me. And so instead of tucking my tail in between my legs and giving up, I decided that I was going to stand up and fight. And so I learned about this company, or this ordinance in San Francisco called the Fair Chance Ordinance. And I was able to leverage them to challenge Microsoft and say, hey, I am not my past. Here's, I made a mistake, but here's everything that I have done right to turn my life around. And here's why you should hire me. And, I think most companies, you got to start somewhere. The narrative has been historically to not hire people with criminal records. And so what I would tell anybody who's formerly incarcerated or justice involved, or whatever the term is that you want to use, if you're looking for work and you do experience this, don't be afraid to stand up. Don't be afraid to fight. Sometimes it takes that one person to stand up and say something. And I'm so glad that I did, because now I've been with the company for almost 5 years. I've had 3 promotions since I started working for them. And it's been a great experience. I had a lot of fear because of the fact that I had to fight to get my job back. I had a lot of fear that I was going to be treated differently because of that. But none of that fear came true. And so I would definitely encourage anyone, don't let fear hold you back. Don't buy into fear, because fear is a liar. And all of those self-limiting thoughts and beliefs that I had about the way Microsoft was going to treat me, as I said, never came true. I was embraced and loved by the company. And although they rescinded their job offer, once they saw how good of an employee I was, they realized, wow, she's awesome. And they treated me as such, and they didn't treat me any differently, because I had this criminal record. So it's been a really great experience. But, like I would just reiterate, don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. I mean, this one girl who got out of prison and had a dream of working in tech, stood up to one of the biggest tech companies in the world. And now I'm here going on 5 years strong. So
Congratulations.
thank you.
Every time I hear your story, it makes me emotional. So thank you for sharing it. And Natrina, Senior Program Manager at Slack for Good. You've been working with Next Chapter and now Slack for Good to create on-ramps for people returning from incarceration into tech. So you've been able to see these success stories like Shelley's in your time in this work. Can you talk about how you've seen this issue evolve over the last few years? Generally, how are tech companies receiving these programs, and what impacts are you seeing from your success stories?
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, I think just talking a little bit about kind of the history of how we've even came to be with this program might be helpful. So, my name's Natrina. I'm a senior program manager at Slack. I originally was working at the Last Mile, which is a coding boot camp inside California prisons, now across many prisons across the US. And the question that I got time and time again as program director was, what does my future actually look like? Can I actually get a job in tech? And at the time, we had CEOs and executives come in and talk about how tech levels the playing field, tech is an equalizer. But is that really true for people who are coming out of prison? And I think the story that Shelley shared is such a story that a lot of our students had experienced. So the goal for us was to really develop a pipeline from incarceration to the actual tech sector. And that's what came to be Next Chapter. What had happened was we brought Stuart Butterfield, who's the Slack CEO, into San Quentin to meet our students. There, the head of Slack for Good, Deepti Rohatgi, asked me, what can we do as a tech company to actually help people who are currently incarcerated. And so there began the blueprint. We have an 8-month apprenticeship program with fully paid, with education, mentorship, as well as a apprenticeship on site at a host company. We started with 1 company, Slack, and 3 apprentices. All of those individuals got full-time offers and are currently engineers at Slack. The second year, we had 4 companies across 4 companies with 8 apprentices. All of those individuals got full-time offers as well. And this year we have 11 companies with 21 apprentices, and we hope obviously the same for them. So what we can see just of this history is this rapid growth as well as this excitement around this population. What I've realized is that people are now open because of Slack's leadership, because of the leadership of Stuart Butterfield. They're open to this. Not only are they open to this, but they're seeing, we actually have a wait list of companies, that are interested in providing this opportunity to people who are formerly incarcerated. I think what people are realizing and surprised about is that we don't think of this as like a charity. This is not just like a program. This is really highly skilled talent. This is talent that we want to be challenging Harvard and Stanford graduates. And we're seeing that our students and our apprentices and our graduates are getting promoted at a faster rate, getting raises at a faster rate. The impact of this program is breaking cycles of intergenerational poverty, as well as cycles of incarceration. So this has been an incredible success thus far, and we hope to continue to have it grow.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing. I'd like to open this up to all 3 of you, but Ken, I'd love to start with you first. We get this question a lot, and I'd love to hear all of your thoughts on this. Why tech? Why is it important that the tech industry specifically welcomes people returning from incarceration?
Sure. Well, I think that for me, the thing that's most important is access to the knowledge-based and technology-based economy. We live in an economy that's driven by knowledge, information, and technology. And for too long in this country, Black and brown people specifically, who represent 80% of the people that come from incarceration, their value in the labor force has been based on their physicality. They're oftentimes pushed into physical labor type jobs and haven't been valued appropriately when it comes to their intellectual capacity. And I'm here to testify as a person that served 24 years in prison. I know people like Shelley Winner, I know people like Ali Tambor and Kenyatta, and thousands of other people who are some of the brightest minds that I've ever been around in my life. And so I think that tech specifically, who has been part of the greatest redistribution of wealth and accumulation of wealth in in the world history, right, has a responsibility to the communities that they serve, to the communities who operate on their platforms and use their platforms to give back to the community, to provide opportunity for all sectors and all people, whether it's people with disabilities, whether it's LGBTQ community, whether it's people who have criminal records. We think that, again, diversity, inclusion is a very necessary thing for tech. And so why not tech? They have heavy resources. That's where most of the opportunity for economic mobility exists. We know the future of work lies in technology, so we think that everyone should have access to that.
Absolutely. And Natrina, it looks like you're nodding along emphatically.
Yeah, I completely agree with Ken. I think that tech is what I consider the 21st century gold mine, right? Like there's so much opportunity. There's so much people who are interested and excited about it. And what we've seen with the pandemic is that the jobs that are, falling behind or the first to get cut are often the jobs that are put on people who are already marginalized, jobs that are considered, not in tech, jobs that are considered like unskilled labor. I don't like that phrase, but anyway, so we want to provide that opportunity to people who get that intergenerational wealth. These are 6-figure jobs. This is the difference between job training and career training. I think a lot of nonprofits as well as organizations are training for jobs that are $15 an hour, which is amazing. But at the same time, what we need for people who are coming out of prison, who have nothing, who maybe potentially have, had the last decade of their life, if not more, without building that wealth, they need actual systemic change. And I think tech offers that opportunity. And there's a lot of interest in tech to do good, I think. I think you see that working at Tech Equity. tech workers want something passionate. They want their culture and their company culture to stand for something. And so what we ask at Next Chapter and at SAC is to look at your own house. You know, what are you actually building? It's easy to just drop a check. And I think a lot of tech companies do that, which is great. But what are you actually doing inside to make sure that this opportunity is for other people?
Absolutely. And Shelley, I'd love to hear from you as well.
Well, I knew I always had an affinity for technology. And so I knew that I wanted to work in tech, but I didn't know how. But one of the main reasons why I wanted to work in tech, not only because of my love for technology, but I knew it was going to provide a job that was going to break that systemic cycle of poverty, right? I knew it was going to completely change the trajectory of my life. And I knew it was going to be a job that would be fulfilling as well. And so once I got my foot in the door, it was go time. I was like, all right, my foot's in the door. I'm doing everything I can to work super hard. I'm going to work my way up and get to where I am, got to where I am today. And it's completely changed my life. I'm able to now, I have money in a savings account. I have 401k. I put away money for my son's college fund. I just bought a home. These are all things that working for $15 an hour, you're never going to be able to achieve. And so that's what I love about tech companies, is they do offer these jobs. And we can get more people who are just as involved who are so talented and amazing into jobs like this. I mean, I know that these companies would be so glad that they've given these people a chance.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the reasons why we like to focus on tech is because tech is such a space for innovation. And, in terms of the actual technology, people have been innovating and pushing industries, by leaps and bounds. And we want tech companies to use the space that they have, this capacity and all of the prosperity that it has, to apply that kind of innovation to hiring practices. Because if tech can do it, that means that it opens up doors for other industries all across our economy to be able to do so as well.
Right.
Awesome. So what do you think needs to change inside of tech companies to be able to scale these programs? And how does that apply beyond tech? Open to anyone.
I think there's a lot of fear. And I think this has just been, this is the way it's been for so long. People who go to prison and are, bad people, I guess you could say. That's the stigma. We're unskilled. We are more likely to cause violence in the workplace. We are more likely to steal something. And that's the problem, is that stigmas. It's been that way, that stereotype. And so a lot of companies have this fear to hire us because of this society stigmas. And I think what it takes is education. It takes, events like this. It takes my TEDx. It takes people speaking out. It takes people who are formerly incarcerated who do get that second chance to really just, go above and beyond at their job. So yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is just, the way that it's been for so long, but things are definitely starting to change, and companies like yourself, Tech Equity, are helping to really bring education and awareness. And I think that's the start on how to really start changing the way it is, right? And start implementing new practices and creating hiring initiatives specifically for formerly incarcerated. I mean, they do it for veterans, they do it for autistic, they do it for LGBTQ, they do it for Blacks. Maybe companies can start thinking about let's do something specifically for formerly incarcerated.
If I can just build upon what Shelley said, I think there's a couple of things. I think investing in talent development. Natrina's group does a great job in investing in people. And we know that when you invest in people, you get a great result. And so tech is uniquely positioned to not just innovate when it comes to things and data, but they're also in a unique position to innovate when it comes to the desegregation of opportunity.
Mhm.
And so, you know, becoming more human-centered in the way that we approach tech, becoming more social in the way that we approach tech is something that they can do initially. The second thing I would say is look to people who are already doing it, right? There are a whole lot of companies out there that are invested in these initiatives, right? Who are demystifying some of the false notions that we have about people who have a criminal conviction. There are 70 million people in this country who have some type of criminal record, an arrest, a misdemeanor. That's a third of the workforce. There's a great book, you know, and I don't mind giving a shameless plug to a good friend of mine named Jeffrey Kozenik called Untapped Talent, and who makes a very wonderful business case about the talent shortage and how justice-involved people are a very rich talent pool. And then I would add on top of that is that when you look around and see what's been produced from that talent pool, to Natrina's point, you see some of the most loyal, great, talented, highly capable, highly efficient people in the world that are thriving, right? And so we're really talking about taking the initiative in bold steps to follow people who are already doing it if you don't know how, partnering with community-based organizations who are doing the work and preparing the talent and providing people sector-based certifications, college degrees in some instances, and really taking bold steps.
Thanks, Ken. I think I'd like to add to that on just like, I think what tech companies really need to do is really identify the difference between equality and equity. I think that equality, they believe, okay, equal access, let's remove this barrier, let's you know, change our hiring practices here, which is amazing and great, but the extra step is to actually invest in potential, you know, obviously, and also have empathy when it comes to hiring, understanding that other people have different life circumstances that, you know, need to be supported and need to be mentored and cultivated. And so that's why when we have this apprenticeship, that 5-month period of them on site is really for them to learn and to be a student and absorb everything they can, and given that additional support. The question that we ask all the time to our students is, what is stopping you from being the best engineer possible? And this could be, you know, their parole officer. This could be, you know, there's issues at home. This could be restitution. This could be a variety of things that people who are, you know, your standard tech worker might not have to deal with. And so understanding that the manager, the team members, everyone that is working with this individual has that kind of level setting to understand that this is something that we want to invest in is really important. And at Next Chapter, what we really want to do is focus on cultural change, because it's not just a systemic issue, it's not just a hiring issue, this is a mindset issue. To Shelley's point, I think a lot of the work that we do is trying to shift the idea from fear to love. And at Slack, when we first started it, it was definitely, we were nervous, you know, we were nervous about how tech workers would respond to it. And now 4 or 5 years later, it is a beloved program. It is one of the reasons why people join Slack in the first place. So we've seen it not only, you know, excite our employees, but also help recruit and retain.
That's
And
great.
I think,
Oh, go ahead, Shelley.
I was gonna say, and I think, you know, companies can focus on the rehabilitation efforts of the applicant as well, because that speaks numbers. I don't want handouts, and I don't want companies or tech companies to give handouts to formerly incarcerated. I want them to hire the best applicant, but I want some of those applicants in that 70 million pool of, you know, of people who have a criminal record. In that pool, you can't tell me there's not any applicants that are going to be an asset to your company, who are going to be a kick-ass employee. And I want to encourage companies to hire those applicants, hire the best, hire the ones that put in that work to turn their life around, hire those shining stars, because there's plenty of people who have a criminal record that are just amazing employees. And it's just getting past those stigmas, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And Natrina, you've seen this kind of scaling happen live in person in your experience in Next Chapter and Slack for Good. I'm wondering, what are some of the trends you've seen that have enabled that scale, and what are some of the barriers you've seen that you've tried to address in your work?
Yeah, I mean, I think that social signaling has been really, really great. I mean, I think that if we wouldn't have been able to expand to Zoom, Square, and Dropbox had Slack not taken that first leap. And Slack taking that first leap in the beginning was a big risk for them at the time. You know, they had never done a program specific like this, and it was a huge investment. A lot of time. It wasn't just, like I said, throwing a check at an organization, which we had many organizations do, which is great, but actually hiring them, investing in them, putting a lot of time and energy and people power on making sure that these barriers were addressed. So these are legal barriers. These are barriers of like, oh, we only accept people with this amount of experience and this amount of education. But why? You know, asking yourselves those hard questions. Why are these blanket statements the way that are kept because of status quo? So really challenging people who have more of that institutionalized mindset of what hiring practices should be or hiring should be in general, and breaking that down one by one. I mean, it took a lot of discussions in the beginning, a lot of cultural change engagement in the beginning to get this to the point it is today. And this means, you know, Kenyatta Leal, who's our executive director at Next Chapter, speaking about his own story and creating that empathy with people. And people also, we ended up working at Slack's office for a year, you know, like working next to the people, being able to have conversations and having our students work side by side, individuals in tech, and learning their stories, you know, really humanizing them by treating them just like everyone else. So I think that that's what we've seen be really successful. Is that your question? I feel like there was a second half of the question that I didn't answer.
No, that's great. Yeah, and Ken, now that you're looking at this watershed investment from the state into your housing and workforce development programs, what kind of lessons are you trying to bring into this program to make sure this scale is successful?
Really, what I spent most of my time talking to the legislature about, there are three things that I'd like to share. The first one is the power of proximity. And how people who have lived experience across sectors should be the ones that where their voice is amplified. They should be the ones leading the solutions to some of the problems that exist. So I encourage company executives, I encourage all of the people who are involved in these processes that if you don't understand an issue or you're trying to solve a problem, to bring people who have been affected by that. And, you know, Next Chapter and Kenyatta do a great job over there because he's directly impacted like myself. The second thing that I think we spent a lot of time talking about is the future of work. And what does that mean for this country? What does that mean when it comes to people who are exiting incarceration? What's going to happen to them 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now? Are they going to be forever relegated on an island of service jobs of $14 or $15 an hour jobs? And, you know, there's nothing wrong with a $14 or $15 an hour job if you live in Wyoming. Yep. When you live in the San Francisco Bay Area or you live in Los Angeles County, that's a quick pathway to being unhoused. It's a quick pathway for losing hope. It's a quick pathway for not being able to survive in some of the most expensive economies in this country. I think the third thing that I impressed upon the legislature and the group and what's important is to think in terms of things holistically. It's very difficult to create a program or have the intention to create a program without thinking about how somebody's housed. If you take someone who's exited incarceration, who doesn't have a support system, and you say, I have a great training program, and you haven't thought about where that person's going to sleep at night, then you're not thinking about that holistically. And so people need, when we talk about reset, right? I don't mean to steal you all's phrase, but what people need when they're resetting is they need support. They need holistic wraparound service support, a chance to rebuild, to regroup, to reintegrate back into the community in a meaningful way. They need an opportunity to think. And so what we really thought about is how can we create the optimal learning environment for people? Like we think that giving people the opportunity to learn, build the skill set without thinking about the economic stressors or housing stressors or some of those other things that cause people to fail is how we approach it. So that's kind of how we look at it, and we encourage others to look at it in the same way. We're trying to build a model for real systems change, not just to affect individual lives, but to really change the way that we look at infrastructure for people who've had these tremendous traumas and barriers in their life, which decades of incarceration are due to.
Hear, hear. Yeah, I wish I want to write that all down. We can just share that out every week so everyone knows. Okay, I think we're now going to head on over to Q&A. So I'm going to welcome Megan Abel, our Director of Advocacy, to the Zoom. And if anyone in the conversation is still interested in submitting questions to Q&A, feel free to drop them in now. Take it away, Megan.
Hi, Marian. Thanks for welcoming me back. And thank you to our amazing panelists. This has been such a rich discussion, and I am hearing from folks in the Q&A and in the chat that they're really excited to start these conversations in their companies, but are wondering how they can address naysayers. So how do we best combat individuals within our companies or sentiments who say that this kind of hiring increases their hiring costs or it's too risky? So how do we combat that type of opposition that might occur when we go back to our HR departments and say, hey, what is our company doing for this?
I don't mind jumping in with that. It's a really great question because we've created in this society a second-class citizenship for people who are justice involved. And what a lot of people don't realize is that this is a holdover from King's England, where you had this notion of this civil death. When a person committed a crime, they couldn't get married. They had all these different civil things that attached to them for the rest of their life. And when a person has been convicted of a felony in this country, it's almost like a scarlet letter that they have to wear around for the rest of their life. And it's almost like a second prison sentence. And for some people who didn't go to prison, it's almost like a first prison sentence because it stops you from accessing housing in a meaningful way. It stops you from accessing the careers and jobs in a meaningful way. It stops you from being able to get licensing in meaningful ways. It stops you from doing a whole lot of things. So we've created this two-tier system. And what I typically tell people is, if that's the system, then what are we expecting 70 million people, 8 million in California to do? If we're not providing the opportunity for them to rebuild and regroup and have a second or third or whatever chance it is, it really doesn't even matter. What matters is that, are we creating spaces of equity? Are we creating spaces of inclusion and giving people a chance to recover from a bad decision? I don't think there's anyone on this call or anyone that you've ever talked to that didn't make a very poor choice in their life, whether it was personal, whether it was in their neighborhood or whatever. And I invite people to consider what they would feel like if every single thing that they went to do in their life was decided upon based on that mistake that they made when they were 17 or 18 or 19 or 20. I mean, it would drive most of us bananas, right? If that was the case. Every job interview, every relationship question, everything was, based on that. So I think what I tell people most of the time when I talk to companies is, first of all, let's try to unpack and demystify what it means when somebody has a criminal record, when somebody's made a mistake. And then also let's think about the consequences of creating a society based on exclusion versus inclusion. When people feel excluded, then people lose hope. And when people lose hope, it's very difficult for them to become contributing members to the society in the way that I think society in general wants us to contribute.
Well, send your HR reps my TEDx.
That too. Shelly did a great job.
Perfect. We also have some questions in here from tech workers that ask, how can they make sure that the culture of their company beyond policies is supportive of formerly incarcerated people? How do you make folks feel welcomed and make sure that the environment is supportive as a coworker?
I'd love to just get in on that. I would say something very, very simple. Just treat them like they're normal people. I don't think you have to do anything at all other than just be yourself and treat them the same way you do your other coworkers. I don't think there's a special recipe to treat people who stole a pack of cigarettes 15 years ago. They're human beings. They want the same things in life as you do. They want to pay their mortgage. They want to pay their car note, et cetera. At the end of the day, we're just people, right? No different than anyone else. And so I invite people to just treat people normally. Don't try too hard.
For our apprentices, what we always ask their managers and everyone who we work with and interact with is to expect excellence. Don't expect this to be some sort of like deterrence from you being able to be successful in your job or work or anything. Expect excellence, and you will get excellence back, I think. I mean, we've seen that from all of our apprentices, now engineers. Not, like I said, not only are they fully hired, but we're often told that they are one of the best engineers, if not best coworkers that they've worked with. The amount of dedication and like hard work that they put in is just, it speaks for itself.
We've got a question here about if you're a hiring manager, what are some of the things you should be looking for in hiring a formerly incarcerated person? Shelley, you talked previously about look at how hard somebody worked on their reentry. So for those of you that are in a position of hiring a formerly incarcerated person, I guess Natrina, what are the criteria that you're looking at? How should an HR manager who's hiring someone be evaluating the candidate and factoring in that experience?
Absolutely. So, I think that, obviously it is up to the individual to share their story is one, there's no, and we actually in our organization, we support it because we think that you can find it on Google and you're going to find it in the background check. And we'd much rather have you, the individual as a person, to be the first person to share your story rather than a Google search or a background check. So that's one. But for a hiring manager, I would say, this is the phrase that we use, it's not what they did, it's what they've done. As in who have they been since then, since their incarceration, since their crime, since their offense, to transform their lives. So this could be mentoring, this could be giving back to community, this could be bettering themselves through education. These are the things that we should really focus on. And we should also think about their potential and their future rather than their past. And we dive deep into this with all of our hiring managers as well as our team into like exactly what they should be looking for. And we also partner with, I think for hiring managers, partner with community partners such as Next Chapter who do that additional vetting. We go through a 6-step interview process, which is very, very intense. And the final interview is our hiring partner who will have the final say. So they have that buy-in, they have that choice at the end of it. And we've kind of given our support and our excitement for the individual.
If I could just build a little bit on what Natrina said, Megan, there are companies out there and organizations out there that teach companies how to do this. I myself am a person that facilitates Fortune 100 companies taking these DEI workshops and programs, working heavily with HR, with big companies like that. We're currently doing one with the Gap. We're currently doing one with the state of Tennessee. I've done one with the North Carolina Workforce Development Board, Koch Industries. A wide variety of companies are interested in fair chance hiring, and contact organizations that know how to do it. Dave's Killer Bread Foundation is a great organization that teaches these facilitations. You can sign up for them. You can take your HR team through them in teams of 3 or 4 or 5 and really unpack the process. There's an 8-week process where you learn how to do nature tests. You learn about the rehabilitative process. You learn about how to build stakeholders. You learn about legal. You learn about insurance. You learn about all these different things that make the process much easier. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. What you have to do is have a little bit of initiative and a little bit of business development mindset and say, let me contact a person to figure out how to do this.
The final question that I'll ask, which is a 2-part question, so I suspect that it'll take some time, is what do I do if I'm a tech worker who has nothing to do with hiring? How can I affect change? What can I do tomorrow? I'm fired up and excited to get started coming out of this conversation. And then on the flip side of that, what can I do if I'm an HR manager or a hiring manager or someone that actually can affect change on this? What should I do tomorrow? So help us to have those 2 constituencies navigate coming out of this conversation.
So it's really interesting because, I've worked with many different tech companies, and we have some tech companies who have been a very top-down approach. The executive has heard about our program and wants to be part. And then we have other companies that it was started by someone who had nothing to do with hiring. We actually have one company that I love that we were approached by the individual who was doing like their background checks, like very, very junior level. They were doing the background checks and we were realizing I hate having to say no to people for arbitrary reasons. and they reached out to us. We helped them build a coalition, and we were able to be successful in that company, not only for 1 year, but the next year too. So we've seen that grow, and we've seen that as long as an individual is passionate, scrappy, and can work well across teams, this is totally possible. And we have, like I said, I think the best thing is that you're not doing it alone. If you need help, Next Chapter is here to help you. We have pitches, we have support, we have the expertise as well as the legacy to make this possible.
Shelley, Ken, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this question as well.
Go ahead, Shelley. I'll wait for you.
Oh, Shelley, you're muted. Zoom bingo. We had to play it at least once.
Yeah. What was the first question again?
The question was, if you're a tech worker that has nothing to do with hiring, what should you do coming out of this event tomorrow to support the hiring of formerly incarcerated people? And then the flip side of that is, if you are an HR manager or someone that has something to do with hiring in tech, what should you do coming out of this conversation tomorrow?
Bring in Ken Oliver and Crop to to educate. I think education is the key. And so, for example, I had a committed ally who was not in charge of any of the hiring, but he was very passionate about bringing knowledge. Even before I started working in corporate, he was very passionate about educating the managers who were going to be involved in my hiring process, in the interviewing process. And so he made sure he wanted to educate them beforehand of what I had done right. He was an ally till the end. He still is my ally. And I think, really it's just talking to your managers, asking questions, maybe seeing if your manager will bring in Crop to do a meeting to educate them on how, the benefits of hiring the formerly incarcerated. Send them my TED Talk. No. But, that's where I'd say, to start. And I don't know, what do you think, Ken?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because oftentimes people get warm when they hear conversations, they get fired up, and, quickly, if they don't know what to do, which is the case in anything, not just this, it starts to die down. I would say first is to learn about the issue. Right now you're hearing stories and, it's excitable. Really learn about the nuances of what it takes to start a pilot program at your company. Don't be afraid to reach out to people like Natrina, to like people like Shelley, to people like me, to people like Ali, or other people in your community, wherever you're at, and ask questions. I think the worst thing that you can do is be excited and go talk to the head person and then blow your pitch and not have a full understanding of what you're bringing to the table as far as the issues, because different people have different perspectives about things like this. And so it's very important that you go in with all of the tools necessary to state the case about why it should be part of their corporate social responsibility. And that takes just a little bit of research, takes having just a little bit of knowledge. There are some very compelling statistics and data and stories, like you've heard today, that can really move people to say, hey, let's consider going down this path. Let's do a white paper. Let's put together, a 2 or 3 page proposal. Let's put some stakeholders in the room, and really start to convince other people in the company that this is a worthwhile endeavor. So I would say learn about it first. That's the number one thing. And you guys can take my email down. I'm going to educate anybody that's willing to listen about how to develop these programs. I'm sure, I don't want to speak for Natrina. Hopefully she's willing to do the same thing. I know that Shelley is too, and there's a lot of organizations we can point you to. It's not just Crop. There are other organizations doing talent development. But yeah, that's what I would recommend.
And I just read an article. The White House announced that they are now second chance employers. And so if the White House can do it, anybody can do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and Ken, I'm glad you brought up the education point and like getting familiar with these issues. And that's one of the reasons why we created the System Reset Guide. In the guide, there is a primer of incarceration and employment in the United States. There is the business case, so it gives you tips to talk to your hiring managers and your executives on why System Reset is important. And it also gives a step-by-step toolkit of how to actually get your program started. So we all highly encourage you to read the System Reset Guide. As a first step for everyone here, we'd highly encourage everyone to take the System Reset Pledge. In the pledge, you'll be able to say, declare your commitment to the cause, as well as give us information on how we can best connect you to the right organizations, whether it be CROP, Next Chapter, or any other organizations to help you get your System Reset framework started at your tech company. For the sake of time, I want to wrap up here. Thank you so much to our panelists, Shelley Winter, Natrina Gadana, and Ken Oliver, as well as our ASL interpreter, Cress Garcia. You've all been amazing. Thank you, Megan, for doing Q&A, and we'll see you around. Thank you all so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.